Hey, it's the PHNX Cardinals podcast, your premier Arizona Cardinal podcast. Like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your programming. I'm Johnny Venerable, the returning Bo Brock from Memorial Day weekend. We are back with a monster Tuesday show, Mr. Bo Brock, to welcome our friend of the program, Kyle Odegard, among a variety of topics.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to Kyle. I checked in with him on Friday after the news of DeAndre Hopkins broke. Said he wanted to jump on. He obviously was working on his article that he dropped today about the Arizona Cardinals and their rebuild that they are embarking on. So we'll get Kyle on here in just a few short moments, but excited to do it. I hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. I flipped on NFL Network last night, Johnny, and the Football Life for Pat Tillman was on, and it's all. I think it's essential viewing for any Cardinals fan, any football fan out there. It really reminded me of some things, and Kyle's ready to go here. But how about Pat Tillman before he ended his NFL career? He was a free agent in the offseason the previous year, and he visits the St. Louis Rams at the time, and he's contemplating whether or not he wants to sign a more lucrative deal because the Cardinals aren't even having conversations about a new deal with him. He
of
says,
course not.
I can't do this. I can't effing do this because this is the team that gave me my shot. He signed for the league minimum, played for $512,000 another season for the Arizona Cardinals before joining the Army, obviously, and then losing his life in friendly fire, becoming just unbelievable, just legend, and one of the big reasons why Memorial Day exists to honor those like Pat Tillman and so many more that paid the ultimate sacrifice. But like I said, essential viewing for Cardinals fans, for football fans, for anybody is looking to learn about just great people from our country.
Essential viewing to essential reading. Our friend of the program, he is sports and gambling editor at Compare.bet, as well as a growing NFL insider. Kyle Odegard joins the show. Mr. Kyle, I like your t-shirt first and foremost, my friend.
Not just you, it is Johnny Cash, but it's a nice cutoff there. It reminds people who you are.
That's right.
Johnny V. So, Kyle, I texted you on Friday after the breaking news that was DeAndre Hopkins, and you told me that you definitely wanted to jump on. You had some thoughts. You put a lot of it in your article today at Compare.bet, but also, there was more to it, right? I mean, we were trying to pinpoint this thing as far as when the relationship between the Arizona Cardinals and DeAndre Hopkins really started to kind of fall apart. And I remember being at the practice in the week leading up to the Atlanta Falcons game. And I remember just kind of seeing across the practice field, DeAndre Hopkins' helmet comes off. He goes into the building. And now here we have it. That was the last we really saw of D-Hop.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the first 2 years were so great, so many highs. Obviously, he's a great player. And I don't know if it ever devolved to the point where like there was serious animosity between the two sides, but I think it's clear that DeAndre Hopkins at this point in his career, he wants to try to win Super Bowls. And I think he felt like that wasn't going to happen in Arizona with the way things were looking, even toward the middle of last year, toward the end of last year, and then going into this season. I even go back all the way to near the trading deadline, I talked to somebody who I trust, and they felt like, D-Hop would have been very fine with leaving the Cardinals at the deadline if the Cardinals were willing to trade him. And Steve Keim didn't trade him, obviously, and he stayed. But the Cardinals were only 3-5 at that point after losing to Minnesota. But I think we all saw where the season was going. And then once it ended, it was clear that D-Hop wanted out. He went on multiple podcasts and shows and may not have said it explicitly, but certainly said it through his actions. But yeah, I think he was ready to go. And I think enough of what he was doing made it to the point where the Cardinals didn't want to bring him back and kind of have the circus for several more months and deal with all that. Like, I don't think he was going to be on the team past this trading deadline, but it got to the point where it might have been too big of a distraction and they just wanted to cut bait and get rid of the storyline.
Kyle, you had posted something that was interesting as it relates to, there were people inside the Cardinals that were upset with DeAndre Hopkins for sitting out the last 2 games. So that was January 1st against Atlanta. The Cardinals lost 20-19. You assume with D-Hop, they probably win that game. And then they got blown out in the season finale at San Francisco, 38-13. Give us a little bit more, if you could, insight into that, because from our vantage point, it was like, yeah, the Cardinals need to lose these games. And my take at the time was, well, they're clearly holding out D-Hop to entice his trade value, to keep him healthy. At that point of the season, they're starting David Blau. I didn't see personally the benefit of D-Hop playing in those 2 games, but did Michael Bidwell want DeAndre Hopkins playing in those 2 games?
I'm not sure about Michael Bidwell. I do know that there were people within the organization, other places, that didn't love that he didn't want to play. And yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a big Embrace the Tank fan myself, and I thought it made sense to sit him if that's what they wanted to do. But we think a little bit differently than people that are there, that are doing the blood, sweat, and tears, putting into it. You only have 17 games a season. JJ Watt's out there. There's other guys. Budda Baker's out there fighting through injury in a lost season. So I think I don't want to say it was a bunch of people or any of that, but there were some that wished he would have played and wished he would have kind of done it for the organization, done it for the team. And there were people that on the team that are wearing like free D-Hop shirts early in the preseason when he was suspended, and felt like maybe there wasn't that reciprocation toward the end of the season, that he wasn't giving back maybe what other people were putting into him within the team. So I understand why he wouldn't want to play. He needs to protect his own value, and it was a meaningless final 2 games. So I understand from his perspective, but I did want to report that it did irk some people within the organization that he wasn't out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were shocked when the news came down Friday, but then you kind of start to look at the timeline and the upcoming timeline as far as it being a holiday week, a shortened week, June 1st. I mean, that's the most important thing here as far as getting DeAndre Hopkins off the books, because if they had held on to him beyond June 1st, that cap hit that was over $22 million splits in half, right? And one's, half is in 2023 and the next half is in 2024. And you outlined in today's article day on compare.bet as far as what type of, cap, I guess, luxuries they get by cutting early on DeAndre Hopkins. Where Arizona currently has $51 million in 2024 cap space, which could be around $65 million after a rollover. The Cardinals cut running back James Conner, tight end Zach Ertz next offseason. Projected cap space jumps nearly to $80 million. Now, with a roster like this in place, Kyle, obviously not likely to produce a lot of wins, but it does produce a lot in the form of assets, cap money for Monty Ossenfort to kickstart this rebuild finally.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of what they're doing. It felt like Steve Keim, if you were a 7-8 win team, he was optimistic enough to believe that, hey, we're just a few pieces away from competing, and that left you in that 7, 8, 9 win, 10 win area for a long time. And can we really say they've had a Super Bowl shot since 2015, 2016? Maybe a couple years ago before it all fizzled out, they obviously looked pretty decent, but I feel like doing this, just completely resetting, getting some money off the books, getting rid of guys that won't be here in 2 or 3 years when you expect to compete, turning that into assets is super important. And we've all talked ad nauseum about that Houston trade where they have their pick in 2024. I think that was the best thing Monty Ossenfort has done this offseason. Yeah, perfect trade for the timeline the Cardinals are on. So I think in an ideal world, you could have gotten something for DeAndre Hopkins, and I think they may have erred a little bit. I'm guessing you probably got an offer of a draft pick earlier in the offseason before free agency, before the draft, and that's hindsight. Like you were probably looking for a day 2 pick, and if you got a 5th round pick back then, it's like, I don't think this is worth it. So I can understand why you wouldn't pull the trigger on a later round pick. But yeah, they got nothing, but they still made the right move. It's funny. I wrote a story about 3 or 4 days earlier saying I think cutting him is an increasingly realistic option, and that I would do it before his contract became guaranteed. So I was on board with the move they made.
So it moves from what are they going to do with DeAndre Hopkins to potentially what are they going to do with Kyler Murray? And I made a comment on Friday's show, Kyle, that I think anybody with ties to Steve Keim in terms of robust salary are not safe on this roster, for better or worse. You figure the rookie class from last year, the Trey McBrides, the Majay Sanders, those guys are fine because they're making no money. But you look at Kyler Murray and maybe the increasing likelihood that this team may not win many games this fall. And you think about when is the appropriate time to roll him back into action. And I'm getting the sense that outside of an increased recovery timeline where maybe he's on the field late September, early October, what is the benefit, Kyle, do you believe, if this team's heading toward a top 3 draft pick organically on their own? What's the benefit for them to bring back Kyler Murray mid to late November when in actuality you wouldn't have confidence yourself then to say, well, he's our guy in 2024 and beyond? Because I feel like the longer this goes without seeing K1 on the field, and they're saying all the right things in public, the bigger likelihood is that the dead money that they're eating in 2024 is not D-Hop, but it's Kyler Murray.
I don't think it's a great chance that happens because I feel like the stuff I've heard behind the scenes is that they're pretty excited about Kyler Murray and what he can do. And I think we need to remember that the dude's a really talented player. Like we're not talking about a journeyman or somebody who hasn't shown it. Like he has shown it. So I think the goal would be get him back whenever that is and see what he looks like within this offense. And if he's the guy that can make those downfield throws and was one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL 2 years ago, if he's that guy, you're very comfortable keeping Kyler as your quarterback, trading down, putting all these draft picks around him and building up with a quarterback who's talented and he's on a big contract, but in a couple of years, it's going to be very middle of the pack as far as contracts. You already see all the ones that have passed him in the last year.
Right.
So it's not going to make you stop from adding pieces. Like we already talked about the cap space they have next year, and that's with $51 million of cap space going to Kyler Murray. So it doesn't totally stop you. But I think you're right. Like if he comes back, doesn't look very good, doesn't seem like a natural in the offense. If you have the number 1 pick, the Caleb Williams chatter will be there, of course. He's going to be a lot cheaper for 5 years. So it's going to be whether you trade down and get 3 first-round picks for him or you trade Kyler and you take Caleb Williams. And that will be a really fun debate for several months if we get there. If we thought the Kyler Rosen debate was something, this will be on another level. Yeah. But I could also see a scenario where the Cardinals start like 1-6, 1-7. Kyler comes back. We know the defense is going to be maybe the worst in the NFL. And if you go 2-6, but you're scoring 25 to 27 points a game with a Kyler Murray who's not even 100% healthy, then you feel like, hey, our offense is going to do something. Let's keep him. So I still think having Kyler in 2024 is the more realistic scenario, but I do agree that certainly if you get the number 1 pick, there's going to be a lot of conjecture and you could take Caleb in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly is probably the scenario. And a lot of people want to chalk it up because you have the Texans pick, because you have your pick, that you're going to be in a pretty solid spot to get that. But, a lot of losing has to happen between now and then. And it's even tough to lose that many games at the NFL level. We've seen that. I mean, the Texans blew it in the final week of the season, and they were bad for a season's worth of time. Let me put a bow on this DeAndre Hopkins conversation. We'll get back to Kyler and maybe Caleb Williams in the future of this franchise. Because my co-host Johnny asked me on Friday, how would you kind of deem the DeAndre Hopkins 3-year experience? And I didn't want to dub it as a failure because I certainly don't believe that. Did you get it out of what you wanted? Season 1, you certainly did. How would you kind of describe the DeAndre Hopkins 3-season experience?
I'd say it was definitely a success with the way he played. Like you said, those first season and a half was awesome. He was unbelievable. Even last year, he was their best offensive player. It was kind of in a short spurt, and obviously the suspension hurt things, and then sitting out the last 2 games kind of muddies it. But the fact that he played at that level during the 3 seasons where you felt like you were going to push for a Super Bowl, I think the trade was obviously the best thing Steve Keim did. It was a really good trade for the Cardinals. He produced for the Cardinals. You never know that somebody's going to tear an MCL like he did a couple years ago. I think it was more about not putting the pieces around him and Kyler, not having the offensive line, not having good enough defense certain seasons. Like, I don't think Hopkins was a disappointment at all. I know it kind of fell apart late, but they're rebuilding this year, and I'm not sure it matters that much. Like, obviously people are going to talk about how it ended and how he wanted out, but even if he didn't want out, like, you look at that cap hit, it just wasn't going to work. He wasn't going to get $30 million on a team that was going nowhere. So something had to happen, and obviously maybe it's not the perfect ending, but I still think it was a really nice stint for D-Hop and AZ.
So Budda Baker told Cam Cox on Friday or over the weekend that he's going to show up at some point to the offseason program or to training camp for the Arizona Cardinals. What do you make of Budda's scenario now, given that, unlike Kyler, he doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money outside of this year, right? And they could potentially move off of him, trade deadline, decline his option. Like, are Budda Baker's days with the Cardinals numbered as well? You see D-Hop and the Cardinals opt to pay him to go away. And now you've got a player in Budda Baker that does everything you want, right, on the field, off the field, but did ask for a trade publicly this offseason. And the Cardinals are not about egos anymore. This is a franchise that's trying to instill kind of a new culture. Do you feel like Budda Baker could be the one significant holdover that makes it work with Jonathan Gannon and company, and you could see him maybe finishing his career into his 30s in Arizona?
I think a perfect Cardinals scenario would be standing pat for a season and making him play this year, not giving him any new money, seeing how it goes. And then if he plays like a Pro Bowler again, if he doesn't get hurt, if you're looking more promising for 2024, then maybe at that point you extend him for 2 more years and push him toward age 30. The scary thing now is you do it. He played really well again last year. He's kind of at the peak of his earning power. You're going to have to pay for that, make him the highest paid safety, and it doesn't kick in until 2 years from now. So you're talking about basically 4 years of under contract. Obviously, Budda's a great player, but he's undersized. He's now nearing his later 20s, getting closer to that 30 number. I think he's only 27 or 28, so he's not there yet, but you start creeping closer to 30 and your value starts going down. So I think there's downside to giving him a contract right now. So the Cardinals, I think, would love to just do nothing and have him play this year and then figure it out. How much noise does Budda make? Like, will he hold in during training camp? Will he threaten not to play when the season comes because a hamstring pops up for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 games if you don't address my contract? I think it all depends on how much noise he makes and what he does, because it reminds me of the Chandler Jones situation a couple years ago when he wanted to be traded, but his base salary was so big that if he didn't play, he doesn't get paid. And Chandler Jones wasn't going to not get $15 or $20 million, and Budda Baker is not going to give up 12 or 15 million, whatever he's about to get this year. You're going to play for that type of money. So he doesn't have a lot of teeth behind the threats, besides a hold-in. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I think the Cardinals and Monty Austinford are just going to try to stand pat as much as physically possible and make him play this year out.
It's really interesting. We've had this conversation as Johnny and I were kind of diagnosing this rebuild, and people before the season even ended, are pounding the table like, you got to reset the button, you got to hit the full reset. And then I don't think they really anticipated what that really looks like. And Monty Austinford is showing you, right? He's making all these unpopular moves, necessary unpopular moves in the name of this rebuild, and never in any scenario did we feel like, oh, the heart and soul, Budda Baker was going to be a guy that's going to potentially be on this chopping block. But Johnny and I were trying to figure out, like, who can you like look at this roster and say, this guy's going to definitively going to be part of the roster going forward. We're trying to figure it out. I mean, Kyler Murray with the if you're sitting 1-1 next 2024 for the draft, you're having the conversation about Caleb Williams. Can you pick out any other names on this roster that you feel comfortable saying, hey, they're going to be a Cardinal for beyond 2023?
Paris Johnson.
Okay. BJ, yeah. That's not bad. BJ Ujulari, even though he hasn't signed his contract, it's tough though. It's like, unless they're Monty Osford, JG guys, I don't think you could safely say it.
Yeah, and I think obviously Kyler, if he comes back and looks good, you're going to kind of double down on him being the guy for a long time. It's going to be a discussion now, but if he gets you, 4 or 5 wins in 9 games, and it's kind of an open and shut case that he's your guy for a long time. But yeah, even like Hollywood Brown, a guy who I think the old regime probably would have extended by now. We don't know what that's going to look like. Budda Baker. I mean, I wrote a column probably a month or 2 ago making the case to trade him because of the contract and because of his age and because of where the team is on this rebuilding timeline. So I agree. Like DJ Humphries, Budda Baker, all these guys that are later 20s, to me, if you're playing well and we can turn it around, you'll be a part of this in 2024 and 2025. But we could also definitely go a different direction and get rid of a bunch of people.
Yeah, you mentioned one that I wanted to bring up. You put it in your article today. I think it fits narratively. DJ Humphries, to me, they move all of his money mostly to this year in terms of the guarantees. So that's another player that you look at next year, probably is not going to be in their plans. Kelvin Beachum got a cheap 2-year extension. Josh Jones, according to Bo, is dabbling at starting tackle during OTAs. That's a name to me. It's like you put him in all the advertisements, the new jerseys, etc. But then you land this, 6'7" behemoth out of Ohio State that does and says all the right things. That's costing you no money. And by the way, is also healthy. Do you think they'd be tempted to maybe deal from their tackle surplus heading into the season to just basically shore up an opening for Paris Johnson Jr.? Because I think the closer we get to this, you're paying D-Hop not to play for you. It's like rip the Band-Aid off and put Paris Johnson at tackle. Don't play him at guard.
Yeah, I don't mind him being at guard for a season. Because DJ Humphries is a good player, it makes sense to me to keep DJ Humphries at left tackle, put Paris Johnson at guard, and I don't think it'll hurt his development too much to play guard for a year. But I agree that if you get into training camp and the Jets reach out because their left tackle isn't looking good, I don't know if it's Mekhi Becton on that side or somebody else, but there's a lot of teams that have left tackles right now. Maybe they feel like they won't when training camp gets here, or somebody gets hurt and you're a contender and you need a serviceable left tackle. DJ Humphries is a good player whose contract isn't prohibitive to trade him. So I think if the value gets there and you can get a day 2 pick for DJ Humphries, that's when I would pull the trigger, more so than not just get rid of him. Because I think you look at Whitworth from the Rams, who played till he was 35, 36, 37. Maybe a left tackle can be that guy into their mid-30s. And if so, DJ Humphries has a bit of runway left. So I wouldn't necessarily be in a hurry to get rid of him because he could always move to the right side. Or you just figure it out. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 good tackles, it's kind of a good problem to have. But if a team does come and they're desperate and you can get a good value deal, I would definitely look into a trade because, like you said, you have a surplus at an important position. So let's cash in on it if we can.
You earlier this offseason reported that from sources around the building that assistant general manager Dave Sears is an absolute rock star. Are you continuing to hear that type of talk about Sears and Monty Ossenfort's front office staff and what you're hearing about Jonathan Gannon's coaching staff? Anything that maybe isn't headline worthy, but interest to fans out there wondering, what the new staff looks like in both the sidelines and the front office?
Yeah, I haven't asked too much about Dave Sears recently, but no, I agree. I heard early on that people really liked the way he went into the draft. He kind of brought some interesting ideas and ways to look at the draft. And I think the stuff they did during the draft with the trades, you would think he had his fingerprints on being an analytics guy. And it just feels like the approach is so much more analytical now, which obviously I'm a big fan of. I think they needed this for a long time and think they're doing the right things. I've heard about Petzing and Israel Woolfork, the QB coach. Sorry, I'm still catching up on who's who over there, but heard good things about those guys. I heard their relationship with Kyler is really good, which is important, and the scheme they're bringing is interesting and has some people intrigued by what they're going to do. Obviously, your personnel holds you back to an extent. When you don't have the players, it doesn't matter, but some of the stuff they're doing, I heard the players are intrigued by. So I think there's definitely optimism about what they can be, maybe looking further down the road. And it might be a big transition year between the players and a lot of young coaches, but I'm not on board with everybody that's like, oh, Jonathan Gannon's going to fail and this offensive staff is too young. Like, let's see what they look like. I don't think age is this huge deterrent. Like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan were pretty young when they got going. So let's give these guys a chance and see what they're about before, tossing them to the curb.
My last question to you, Kyle, is regarding the owner of the Arizona Cardinals, Michael Bidwell, and it remains kind of a black cloud with this franchise, his public dispute with Terry McDonough, and then everything that came from the NFLPA grades, basically flunking the Cardinals out of the building, and the only team worse now is looking for a new owner, presumably, in the Washington Commanders. Do you have a prediction as do you think how it will end with Michael Bidwell? Do you think the Cardinals would potentially be docked a draft pick for everything that's gone on? And have you heard or seen subtle changes since the report card has been made out? Because, I personally heard Michael has been much less hands-on since the arrival of Austin Ford in all of these reports, and that the football people are finally handling the football department for the Arizona Cardinals.
I had not heard that, but I think that's something that is definitely needed. I think if he's going to be more hands-off, that's a good step in the right direction. And I haven't heard too much about the football side of things as far as the NFLPA, but as far as some of the working conditions for the people over there, some of the stuff that was highlighted in the arbitration filing by Terry McDonough, I think it opened some eyes. They had listening sessions with different people in the building and trying to have a better workplace culture, do more things for the employees. So obviously, most fans are more worried about what happens on the field and the product, but
sure,
that's a big side of it too, I think, is for the employees to get treated well. And I think they're trying to make strides in that direction. We'll see if it comes to fruition and helps, but I think they're trying to do that. So we'll see what comes of it. I do think the burner phone, thing will, looking at the filing, like both sides pretty much agree that it happened, and it's in dispute to what Michael Bidwell knew, whether he was part of it or if it was more Mike Disner and Terry McDonough and Steve Wilkes and Steve Keim. And apparently Steve Wilkes didn't take any part of it, so I guess just the other guys. But once we figure out if Michael Bidwell's culpable, maybe that would affect the draft pick thing. I don't know how seriously the NFL would take that, because it was a team-imposed suspension, but I also know the NFL didn't add on to the suspension because the team did one. So it's kind of a gray area. We'll see what they do. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe they lost a later round draft pick, but it's really hard for me to know. I don't see if there's a bunch of precedent for something like that. But, yeah, I think any draft pick loss would be a big deal for a team that needs as many draft picks as they can get.
Yeah, even though they're poised to have about 11 at this point, if you start to add in the compensatory picks, it's like, it's funny. I bring up, I was watching the Football Life with Pat Tillman last night, and it's like they got a mix between when they shot it in 2016 for some interviews there at the facility, Kyle, and Tillman's days with the organization up to 2001. It's like, not a whole lot has changed, and that's not a good thing when you're an NFL franchise. I just saw like Florida International just got a state-of-the-art facility. It's like you can't have FIU having better facilities than an NFL team. So hopefully some changes coming soon. I haven't seen them being out there at OTAs, anything significant at this point, but JG continues to maintain that, this is something that they've been working on since they got in the door. But Kyle, it's been a pleasure talking to you. The guy that broke the news about the Cardinals' new uniforms, we haven't had a chance to give you those flowers because it's something that we were talking, a lot of content that this podcast had for so many weeks leading up to that. Congrats on a strong offseason and of course, even more success to you going forward over at Compare.bet.
Thanks, man. I guess I'll just take like 18 years off and try to get the scoop again when they do it again. Is that the deal?
Right.
Please don't. We love your content. We love his articles. Check them out if you haven't already. Kyle Odegard, compare.bet, friend of the program. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'll see you.
Kyle, bringing the heat.
That's right.
Bringing the heat like the Miami Heat. Miami Heat last night. I wagered on the Boston Celtics. I think I told you
sent
that.
me a little. I got to kind of get a glimpse of what you were dabbling on, and I'm sorry.
Well, my brother-in-law is in town, and he's an NBA kind of aficionado, and I was talking to him. I'm like, yeah, let's just do Celtics. It's a smart place. Do a couple parlays with our friends at BetMGM, and of course, his wife's like, I think the Heat are going to win this tonight. We're like, no. And then the game was not competitive, and I didn't even watch the fourth quarter. I walked my dog, but I did place my wager at BetMGM. You should place a wager or 2 or 3 or 4 at BetMGM because your friends at PHNX we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks. We'll have special offers for our listeners each and every week. Every Saturday and Wednesday, claim your bonus bet on the house. I actually placed my bet yesterday, Bo, and then I checked my email and they had sent me an additional bonus. So it's like Christmas every day with our friends at BetMGM, but the bets do expire for those bonus after 72 hours. So don't wait. Make your bets now. And speaking of now, check us out now and this Friday at the Knockout Nights Cornhole League. First Friday of every month, May through August. Specials, giveaways, BetMGM prizes. Bo and I will be out there hanging as well as the rest of the PHNX crew. If you haven't signed up yet with BetMGM, use that bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona friends and family, you're going to get to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you're using that bonus code PHNX. Check out the show notes for full details. And now my guy, Shane Diefenbach, talk about it in the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
And Shane Deef, he's a rascal.
He
Four
is.
Peaks, of course, best place to go catch a game. NBA Finals set, of course, Stanley Cup final coming up as well. How about the Arizona Diamondbacks? They're heating up. Why not go catch a game over our friends at Four Peaks, 8th Street in Tempe? Great place to sit down on a bar stool, maybe even get a table and watch sporting event. It's synonymous, right? It's synonymous with the state of Arizona for the last 25 years and great beer. You can't get any better than Four Peaks. They brew it right there on their 8th Street location. You can get that kilt lifter. You can get that sweet, sweet nectar that is the Arizona Wow wheat, #1 wheat in Arizona. If you like the IPAs, they got the Staycation IPA. How about they got a hazy? They got a hop knot. Why not go crazy over at Four Peaks? Try all the great beer they have on tap there, and make sure you're following them on social. Whenever they drop any new products, they got a new brews in it, or maybe have a new contest where you can win 4 Peaks, 4 seats. One lucky winner will get 4 seats to an upcoming Diamondbacks game. Tickets come up with along with some D-Bucks, so you can grab some food, ice cold Wow wheat, maybe a hop knot on Four Peaks. Enter by going to @4peaksbrew on Instagram. There's a link in the bio. You got to be 21 years or older to enjoy the beer, but of course you got to do it responsibly as well.
I tell this story all the time. My wife is not a beer drinker. She likes her wine, and we moved here, and she had a Joy Bus Wow, and it is her official go-to beer wherever we go. It's like, hey, do you have a Joy Bus Wow by Four Peaks? So check it out if you have not already. Dylan in the chat, what kind of dog do you have, Johnny? I have a golden retriever, and we got our exercise last night, as did the Boston Celtics, as they're walking home because they are not in the NBA Finals. Cardinals aren't in the finals of anything right now. It's the offseason. But is it a finality now that Budda Baker, Bulbrock, is returning to the Arizona Cardinals? According to Cam Cox of 12 News, he had the scoop exclusive on Friday, Bo, that Budda says he's going to show up when it's time to show up. And I thought that was pretty on par with what we've been hearing what he should do. It's Budda Baker wanting to make his money, as you heard from Kyle Odegard. He's got too much guaranteed money that he would be at risk to lose. What do you make of this Budda Baker saga, and does it change at all? I saw some of this on the Twitter streets. Well, D-Hop's being paid to go. is Budda Baker next in line.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difference between, who's in their prime and who's not. Budda Baker is going to be 27 years old this season, and he's still playing at a very high level. He's, as far as, one of the most reliable guys. I mean, he rolled his ankle, had a high ankle sprain last year. He was expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks, and there he is out there on the practice field as soon as he possibly could be, and he was ready to go playing the next week. Budda Baker is an absolute dog, and he's going to be a part of this team in 2023. And then he says he's going to leave the business part up to his representation, and we'll see how far that can get him. But, if he can take another solid season, and he hasn't had, an unsolid season since he became a pro out of Washington so many years ago, I think that the organization would consider extending him. But due to the fact that they weren't the ones to draft him, and they look at his age, they look at where they emphasize as far as premium positions. He plays safety, and it's not considered a premium position. It really would take an exceptional season from Budda Baker for this team to kind of invest anything beyond what they already have invested in him. And that's, this season, and then a team option for the next season. I mean, he would have to really start taking the football away from opposing teams, something that he's only done, 3 times total in his career as far as interceptions. If he starts picking off footballs, left and right, and he goes over 5, maybe has 6 or 7 picks, to couple with all those tackles he gets, I still don't see that. I think this team's going to dig in and be stubborn, and it's be unlikely to see him sign like this big multi-year extension in order to get him to the end of his career wearing a Cardinals uniform.
Yeah, I listened to what Kyle said, and Cardinals probably prefer to just kind of stand pat, let the chips fall where they may. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not naive to think that the D-Hop release changed everything. We're talking about Caleb Williams here in a little bit, but I do feel like, I mean, you pay an all-pro receiver $20 million to go away. I mean, if you pull the Cardinals and their fan base, who are the 3 best players on the roster, like D-Hop's in that group. So you paid an all-pro receiver to leave your team because you didn't want it a part of your culture. If things get dicey enough with Budda Baker, I don't know, man. As Kyle mentioned, this team starts off 1-6, 1-7.
Dicey in the sense of what? That he's being insubordinate in the locker room, or what?
That's a hamster.
I really don't think that's Budda's nature in order to do so. I mean, he's been the consummate pro, and this is, I mean, as far as acting out, this is almost the outlier to Budda Baker's career. I mean,
things change though. I mean, things change, and the perception of your franchise is, well, they can't keep Hopkins happy. He's gone. People want out. I do think, and we said this when he, requested the trade a week before the draft. Like, I think the time was to hopefully make him happy ahead of when that announcement came out. And now that the announcement's out and he knows he's probably not going to get paid from this franchise, and he's going to be on, as Kyle mentioned, one of the worst, if not the worst defense in the NFL. Like, I'm trying to think of it from Budda's standpoint, and then as a action result, what the Cardinals may do, because I don't keep wanting to beat a dead horse here. I just watched them release an all-pro receiver for no return this year. And I get it. It's like, how big of a deal is a 4th or a 5th round pick? It's a principle thing. And I also look at what you reported, what was it, last week? Isaiah Simmons is playing safety. He's going to play a little linebacker, but it could be just as easy for this team saying, well, we know we got Isaiah Simmons on the roster. We know we got Jalen Thompson on the roster. We need 2 starting safeties. We've got those. Then we've got this entity that we probably won't pay after this year, right? And this year could be a struggle. What can we get for him? I don't think they're actively shopping Budda Baker, but if we fast forwarded, Bo, to July, August, and it came out they're having discussions, wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me at all, given exactly what just went down with DeAndre Hopkins.
There are a ton of variables that the scenarios between Budda and Hop are so different, right? Because Budda, I mean, if you hold serve with Budda, he plays the season for you. And you could have done this with D-Hop, but there's really no financial ramifications for Budda next season if you didn't want him, compared to Hop, where if you didn't make the move before June 1st, you're at least tied to him for almost $11 million, almost $12 million in 2024. And you didn't want that, right? There was just no way out from under that. And other teams, they have their own cap people. They understand that. and you could try to hide from it, and you can, shine up DeAndre Hopkins as much as, how he played with Kyler Murray and how much he has left in the tank. But I think Budda Baker, I mean, if you decide to move off of him in 2024, the max you're going to be paying is like a $3 million dead cap charge.
Right.
So, even if he's the one that's going to play, hardball and he's going to sit out, it's going to cost him. It's going to hit his pocketbook. And like, you have to sit on that and that bad, whatever's going on between the player and the franchise for a season. And then you just move off. And, the person that's going to impact the most is Budda, where I think, D-Hop could have held the Cardinals organization hostage to an extent.
Well, and to your point, I mean, you can get a third-round comp pick. I think if they decline his option, he walks into free agency next year. But that's, it's 2025. It's a long way away. Jose in the chat, thinking football players tank is a casual take. I agree with that. Someone who hasn't played a team sport in their life. And we're going to get to that here in a second as it relates to, are the Cardinals tanking for Caleb Williams? I don't for a second believe Jonathan Gannon is going to go into the season wanting or expecting to lose games. This is a different conversation. But you can only play with the guys you have on your roster. It's a hot take. And when the roster is subtracting premium talent for no return, and then now they get what? $10 million, $11 million back for D-Hop. Their cap numbers has gone up. And they're not going to, I mean, what did we say on Friday's show? We think now the likelihood of signing like a Kareem Hunt, like that's not likely.
Mm-hmm.
And then the attrition of the season, they have a thin roster as it is, trying to get through 17 games. There's a difference between tanking and then just not being good enough. And the Cardinals roster right now, as it's constructed, it's not good enough to produce a good season, maybe an average season. So you factor all that in and it's like, okay, then what's the benefit? What's the benefit of Budda on the roster this year if he's upset? Because to me, it's the same scenario of what's the benefit of D-Hop around? Because at least with DeAndre Hopkins, you could say D-Hop's coming back when Kyler's ready to go. That's potent.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that anymore, right? And that's a problem.
I just think that Budda sets a tone in a different way than DeAndre Hopkins. It's not an indictment on DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, when he came back from his suspension, he was practicing every day. There was a misconception that he didn't practice. He practiced every day that he needed to practice with his teammates up until he pulled himself from practice the week leading up to the Atlanta Falcons game with a couple games left to go, 2 games left to go. So, but Budda, he sets the example and he can continue to set the example. And I really doubt that he would change his ways. I don't know if he's capable of changing his ways to be this disgruntled employee. I really just don't. And he's already, I feel like even his discussion with Cameron Cox on Friday, I highly encourage you to check it out, where you can find Cam on Twitter at CamCox12, I believe. Where he's basically saying, I'm going to give it to my representation and then I'm just going to do what I know what to do. And he's going to show up to mandatory minicamp. He's in the best shape of his career and he's going to let his play. He's going to let his leadership show the player that he is. And I just don't think it would take the Arizona Cardinals and there being, an extreme, just two minds going on each other, like between Gannon and Budda, that would be it would have to be too big of a difference of philosophies for them not to mesh. Because I think that they will. I think Budda, I'm kind of bummed that he didn't embrace a guy like JG from the very beginning, but it's a business too. And it's been a negotiation, even though it's probably going to fall short of what they set out to do and be making him another top paid safety. But I mean, I think that we've got at least one more season of Budda Baker wearing an Arizona Cardinals uniform, and then they have to make a really tough decision the next offseason.
Yeah, no D-Hop in 2023 is officially official. Who is next, and what could it lead to? Could it lead to the first overall pick? We're going to talk about that here in a second, but I want to first talk about my friends at Circle K. Bo, I've got a lot of family in town. My sister's family came from the Midwest. They're doing an extended visit. We absolutely love to see it. Anytime, though, they got a bunch of kids. We got a bunch of kids, right? They're all hanging out. We're going through stuff fast and furious. Whenever I need a quick stop, I go to my friends at Circle K right down the street here in the Copa. I load up the kids, best snack selection. I need the coffee. Give me the coffee to keep me energized, ready to go. They got iced coffees, $1.89. 12 packs of beer for the adults, after hours, $9.99. Red Bull, Monster energy drinks, tons of good stuff. Make sure you're not missing out with our friends at Circle K. Right now, text PHNX, Bo, if you haven't heard this, 31310. Join right now their SMS subscriber club. I'm a member, and I absolutely love all the benefits, which include a buy one, get one free 32-ounce Polar Pop. So I can double fist those unsweetened iced teas, right? Head to CircleK.com/store locator. That's CircleK.com/store locator to find a Circle K nearest to you. So gas it's expensive right now.
Yeah.
Circle K easily in Maricopa, cheapest gas in town.
Yeah, you can't beat it. You can't beat it at all. I mean, you save yourself some gas by getting that white glove delivery from More Furniture. You don't have to pay.
100%.
You don't have to gas up any U-Haul or anything. You can actually just get them. You can order your furniture. You can get them deliver it. They'll get rid of all the packing materials. They'll put it together for you, put it exactly where you want it. Thanks to our friends over at More Furniture, and they still have that Memorial Day sale going on. You can save up to 50% off on select furniture at More Furniture. Get your living room, bedroom, dining room, your kids' rooms. How about your office and entertainment center? It's all going to be pimped out. Do your friends over at More Furniture. Take advantage of their white glove delivery now. Go to the website, morefurniture.com. Save more on the best furniture in the valley with More Furniture at morefurniture.com.
Well, Brock, Fishbowl Flash. We get a comp pick for a team once D-Hop is signed. That is a big fat no.
Yeah, we're past the point in the offseason where, well, especially when you outright release somebody, it's different when their contract expires and then they hit free agency. But if you outright release somebody, that is going to impact your ability to get a comp pick. But Zach Allen still in play, Byron Murphy still in play as far as comp picks go. But D-Hop, no, this is just as we talked about on Friday, it's a loss. It's an L. It's an L for the franchise. It's a jagged pill to swallow. But what it does do is give them the ability to do whatever they want come the 2024 offseason. Now, getting rid of players like DeAndre Hopkins and getting rid of players and letting players walk like Zach Allen and Byron Murphy and having to field a roster of, guys who are traditionally special teamers and backups at this point in his career. The product of that would be losing. And, whether or not you want to just call it a straight on tank job, sure, you can say that's unfair, but the roster that they've constructed isn't a roster that's constructed to compete in 2023.
Do you remember when the Cardinals let Zach Allen go and Byron Murphy go? Rashad Lawrence, who is by default their best defensive tackle, tweeted out the tank emoji and people lost their mind. Rashad, they're going to sign some other players. Turns out Rashad Lawrence is, playing the role of the fortune teller here because listen, when we do a headline right, when I got people on both ends telling me I'm out of my mind, I got people over here saying, Johnny, of course they're tanking. This has been the plan for 2 months. What are you thinking? I got people on the other side saying, hell no, they're not tanking. They're going to compete when Kyler Murray comes back. You and I are probably right dead set in the middle. Now, I think you and I are of the mindset equally, and I don't want to speak for Bo, like the number one pick next year is going to be Caleb Williams. And if the Cardinals have the number one pick, and this is where I disagree with Kyle, I don't think 3 first-round picks is enough for Caleb Williams, and that's the max a team can offer you, right? So if you're the Cardinals and internally you get the number one pick for Caleb Williams, and teams are offering you 3+, and you've got a quarterback that either has led you to the number one pick or remains expensive or whatever, and you're thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just take this quarterback and reset the rookie clock? You're going to seriously consider that. And with the release of D-Hop, something that Bo and I could not fathom back in January, February, just getting rid of D-Hop, telling him to go away. When you have all this cap space, right? I mean, they released Tyrann Mathieu because his production didn't support the contract, and they were always cap strapped those years with Tyrann Mathieu. Cardinals have a ton of cap space, right? How much cap space do they have, Bo Brock?
Well, I mean, if you look at this from Kyle Odegard's article today, he outlines how much cap space they could create, even with Kyler counting for $50 million of their cap hit. Arizona currently has $51 million for 2024 cap space, which could be around $65 after a rollover, the amount that they would go from this season to the 2024 offseason. If the Cardinals cut running back James Conner, tight end Zach Ertz next offseason, very plausible. Projected cap space jumps nearly to $80 million. That's a whole lot of cheese to go into the offseason with. Also, let's take a look at this. You mentioned Caleb Williams. How about this little nugget today from NFL Rookie Watch?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams said in a recent interview that it isn't, quote, any surprise teams might tank to select him in next year's NFL draft. Which team could tank to do that? Anyway, Williams said he was working hard to, quote, re-up on the Heisman, which he won last year, and win a national championship. He did not win that last year. And go first overall, which you could do next year. One NFL scout said recently that Williams is, quote, a refined Patrick Mahomes. Trojans quarterback is star. Fire emoji. How about that?
Certainly some words on a piece of paper. Certainly some words on an emoji. We're going to be in a tough spot this show. And I want everybody to be sympathetic to Bo Brock and I, because we are big Kyler Murray supporters. He is the best homegrown quarterback this franchise has ever had. I think better than anybody they had dating back to the 60s and 70s, with all due respect to Jim Hart, Neil Lomax and company, Jake Plummer. I think Kyler Murray has the chance to be the best. But again, this is a potential generational prospect in the same realm as Andrew Luck, right? And so that has to be factored in. I'll echo what I said earlier. I don't think they're purposely trying to go out there and lose games. Just like Lovie Smith wasn't trying to tank either.
Right.
But the Texans roster did not set him up for success, right? They didn't. Now, Nick Caserio and company, they're trading future first for outside linebackers. So factor that in. But what I would say to everybody who's like, well, they're not going to purposely tank. They could not purposely take on Sundays, but the roster could be so self-sabotaged that it's impossible to compete. Let's just be frank. I think they're going to be better than people think, even without the D-Hop thing. I don't think they're going to have the number one pick. But I think that this first shoe to fall here, trading DeAndre or releasing DeAndre Hopkins for nothing will surprise me now.
Yeah.
You start cutting bait with people, with a Budda maybe, and as you know, others have mentioned, Zach Ertz could be traded at the deadline. What would be the point of bringing Kyler Murray back when the roster itself is in such a fluxed situation? The layers of this are significant. I think it's one of the most intriguing storylines of the NFL season. Will the Cardinals have the roster in place to support Kyler Murray coming back from ACL, or will they just say, you know what, we're just going to roll with this Colt McCoy and company? Because if you're playing Colt McCoy all year, I'll tell you right now, you're getting the number one pick. I don't care what Atlanta does. I don't care what the Raiders do. If they get Carson Wentz, if you play Colt McCoy and Jeff Driscoll for 17 weeks, Caleb Williams is an Arizona Cardinal. 100%.
Yeah. I'm looking at their schedule and I'm looking at the odds. There is two games where they are a field goal or less underdogs. Everything else is they're underdogs by more than a field goal in every single game. So, I mean, you could be as optimistic as you could possibly be, and like BJ Ujulari is going to be an absolute animal. Paris Johnson's he's going to solidify this offensive line. You know, Kazir White is going to be every bit as advertised, and that's still not enough. Like, this roster was a 4-13 roster last year. And then as far as the additions that they made, maybe outside the draft, it wasn't enough to compete. And like that's just reality of the NFL. Are they going to surprise people? Are going to win some games that maybe they shouldn't because of good coaching? I hope so. I hope they're competitive. I hope they're a lot more competitive than what's the same. But when you just stack their roster against who they're playing, I mean, it's tough. Like, just the man across from them. Are there enough guys on the Cardinals roster right now to win their position battle, their assignment, each play in and play out enough to win as many games as people want them to win? I mean, it's just reality of the NFL. It's just how they shape this roster this season. Losing is going to be a product of that. That's just the unfortunate reality of it. but can they surprise people? Can they find building blocks for the next season? That remains to be seen, and that's going to be the exciting part.
I'm going to put this across the bottom. Producer Emma, don't kill me. So I'm going to put this on the ticker. Subtractions for the Arizona Cardinals. J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins.
Says she loves tickers. She loves
Byron Murphy.
We have she thinks it looks great.
Subtractions from a team that won 4 games. J.J. Watt, their best defensive player. DeAndre Hopkins, their best offensive player. Byron Murphy, their number 1 corner. Zach Allen, probably their best budding front 7 player. They're gone. They're all gone. They don't play for this team anymore. They won 4 games last year. And then I will double and triple down, Bo Brock. Like you can play conspiracy theorists with me here if you want. Put your tinfoil hats on. They were negotiating, we know this, with Joshua Dobbs in early March. And it was over pennies on the dollar. It's like you have all this money now. Signing a Dobbs or a Minshew or somebody like that does not prohibit you from competing in 2024. If you invested $2-3 million here, why would they not do that? Why are you not giving out 2 to 3 year, bumps for some of these backups to keep you competitive? Or are you just planning to lose games with the quarterbacks that you have? I think that's twofold. You're either planning to lose games, or Kyler Murray, which is what I thought all along, is coming back sooner. And if Kyler Murray is running around at training camp and he's going to debut in September and October, all this conversation goes out the window. This was always the plan. They've got 4 tackles. They've got Hollywood. They've got Greg Dortch. They've got Trey McBride. They can produce enough offensively. Yeah. But if Kyler Murray is not participating in training camp and he's not close, then you're just going to sit back and be like, oh, they really didn't want to sign anybody. Because this was, I saw Colt McCoy calling color commentary over the weekend. Yeah. That's their starting quarterback in September. That tells me they're not tanking, but it's a self-sabotage to get a generational quarterback prospect. I'll take this off now.
Or maybe not even the quarterback prospect, but it's going to put this team in a position to have 2 top-tier first-round picks next year. You're going to have potentially 2 top 10 picks. If you don't get Caleb, if you lose out on the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, if the consolation prize is you've got 2 top 10 picks, you're still in an amazing position. You've got a franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray, and then you've got a chance to put, the Notre Dame tackle on the same offensive line as Paris Johnson Jr. You get the Florida State pass rusher. You get one of the top corners in the draft. You continue to utilize those picks on premium positions, and your roster looks completely different. You've got 2 starting caliber players that you're going to be able to immediately insert on this roster. And that's what's exciting about all of this. Like, sure, you're going to have to, wade through this shitty 2023 season where I think it's going to provide a lot of exciting moments and a lot of close, games to where, you wish that they could have been on the winning side, but it might be for a better cause that if they're not.
The more I look at this feels telegraphed. And I'm going to tell everybody right now, I reached out to somebody that I trust before the show today, and they told me, they said, regardless of what happens, like Jonathan Gannon's mindset is that he does not doubt Kyler Murray one iota, he told me. And he has immense confidence in Kyler Murray. And the thought process now is that this franchise is going to have Kyler Murray be their quarterback 2023 and beyond. But if a situation occurs where this is a forced issue, just like, listen, they wanted Josh Rosen to be the guy, and then Kyler Murray forced the issue, right?
Yeah.
It was a forced issue.
Right.
And is Kyler healthy? Does he perform? When does he perform? And then what spot do you have in the 2024 draft? Yeah. Anybody that no one can sit here and say, I guess that I'm put a bow on this, Mr. Bo. No one can sit here and say they know definitively what's going to happen. Like, you can't say Kyler Murray is the quarterback or Caleb Williams is, but everything is on the table. And I think that the minute that they told DeAndre Hopkins, when they had the money and they needed to sell jerseys and they want to sell tickets, when they told an all-pro receiver who has some baggage, but they told him, go away, DeAndre, here's $20 million to not play. That's telling you right now that anything can happen. Anything is liable to happen, because that would have seemed unfathomable 3 months ago. What's going to seem fathomable for this franchise and this fan base August and September, October, November? Things change, and they change quick.
And hopefully players are emerging at that point, and at the end of August, early September, you're seeing guys kind of take some spots, maybe a Marco Wilson taking advantage of a cornerback room where he can, go into his third season and be the guy, right? And, somebody in that linebacker room, maybe one of those first rounders emerges, maybe Zaven Collins becomes a pass rush type guy. That's what you're going to be looking for. And then hopefully a season like maybe the Bears experienced last year, right? Where they were in tight games and they were getting great quarterback play when Kyler Murray comes back. And then it's just too much to really kind of win football games at the NFL level, but you're competing and you're giving hope for the future. Like, oh, we got all this cap. They've got all this cap space. They've got all this draft capital. And then you get to have another, you get to have that offseason instead of cleaning up the mess from the previous regime. I do apologize. Marvin Harrison Jr., I thought that was just a given that, MHJ was also in the conversation. So you got the two quarterbacks and you got Marvin Harrison Jr., of course. The Arizona Cardinals are, if they're in a prime position, they're taking Marvin Harrison Jr., no doubt about it. We got a super chat, of course, too. Libertarian Sasquatch saying you got to roll the dice on generational talent. Of course, he's talking about Caleb Williams. I mean, sitting 1-1, that's when you're having the conversation. Sitting 1-2, Drake May, you're probably like, Drake May, fine. If he survives the NFL season, if he doesn't pull Sam Howell and his draft stock doesn't plummet and he continues to have the success, a little bit bigger, better arm strength than Howell, but North Carolina quarterback can get his ass kicked for an entire season and his draft stock could fall. The Arizona Cardinals could, if they're sitting 1-2, they could trade out for a haul. They can take Marvin Harrison Jr., whoever they like the best. So it's really exciting to think about.
So it's to quote one of our favorite movies here, Men in Black, Tommy Lee Jones. 1,000 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, they knew the Earth was flat. 15 minutes ago, you knew humans were alone on it. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow. Imagine what this fan base is going to know tomorrow, 5 months, 12 months down the line, as it relates to Kyler Murray, this franchise, and Caleb Williams. Everything's on the table.
Well, he also says in that movie, a person is smart and people are dumb. And,
they are.
And like the masses are going to tell you, don't buy into the Caleb Williams hype. But if you're sitting there and you're talking to a person, they're going to understand the logic behind that. Yes. Outside of just, hey, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I'm a K1 supporter. Like, of course you are. You want them to be successful. But as far as this organization goes, and you're staring down generational talent, and you're the one that's sitting in the catbird seat, why not have that discussion?
Johnny, but Josh was horrible. This is from the chat, and Kyler is obviously talented. Don't disagree with that. And you could see that right away, 100%. When he played for us, you couldn't see that with Josh Rosen. I think that's why, again, Kyler goes out and performs this year and he buys in. It's an easy decision. You're winning games as a result of Kyler Murray. A couple things can't be disputed. Kyler Murray is expensive, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy each of the last 3 seasons. Has not finished the season healthy. And the Cardinals know that. Monty Ossenfort knows that. If Monty Ossenfort knew this was a sure thing, then there would be no discussion on tanking 2023. They're going to be terrible. It would be like, okay, how can we fortify this roster for when Kyler Murray comes back? Does anybody look at what they're trotting out in September right now and think fortification for Kyler Murray, and we got to get Kareem Hunt, we got to do what we can with D-Hop? No, they're subtracting pieces. Now, are they subtracting it to fortify it next offseason their own way for Kyler Murray? 100% could be a possibility. Justin Pugh put that on Twitter. Bo, you retweeted that. I saw that. Justin Pugh basically came out and said, it's clear what their plan is. They're going to accumulate assets and capital for 2024 for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals 2.0. 100% could be validated by that. But if they have the number 1 pick, that's not what's happening, in my opinion.
Yeah. The very slim chance that happens, even though the Cardinals have, the best chance to hit on that. I mean, the Cardinals are, right now, as far as the 2024 draft goes, they were dealt pocket aces, right?
100%.
But you still got the cards have to be played. The flop has to come out. There's still a hand that could beat them, right? But right now, before the cards have been dealt for the 2024 offseason, the Cardinals have pocket aces.
Pocket Aces is also when you open that sweet, sweet package from Manscaped and you see your monthly performance package, Bo. How about a Lawnmower 4.0? I use it. You look at this setup right here and you're probably thinking I'm hairy all over the place. Shaved.
Wow.
Lawnmower 4.0.
More than I wanted to know.
Weed Whacker 2.0. I got those thick Italian nose hairs. They take care of business with me and my friends at Manscaped. Clean them up like nobody else. Crop Preserver, Crop Reviver, Ball Deodorant, Ball Toner, Anti-Chafing. It's hot and sweaty out there. Be equipped with the Ball Deodorant and the Ball Toner from our friends at Manscaped. And right now, 2 free gifts. The Shed Travel Value Bag, $39, and a patented Manscaped Boxers, easily the best pair of boxers that I own. Right now, it's a call to action. Get 20% off with the free shipping code PHNX at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code PHNX at Manscaped. It's fantastic. It's the perfect opportunity, Bo. As we get into pool weather, right? Want to make sure you're on point for all your friends, all your family. You don't want to come out there looking like the Sasquatch. Get your Manscaped ready to go, rocking and rolling. No better time than to sign up with us and our friends at Manscaped.
Yeah, you can't beat it, especially this time. You got Father's Day coming up. Why not?
Yeah.
Get your father dialed in for this summer so he's not coming out and looking like he's got a hair sweater on. Manscaped's going to hook that up, and he's going to look presentable by the poolside, even though he's probably got those New Balance Monarchs on or the Nike Monarchs on, and he's kind of embarrassing you. But
maybe a fanny pack.
Yeah, maybe a fanny pack, but at least he's not going to have, the nose hairs coming out of nowhere. So get in on Manscaped and use that promo code PHNX.
Another great Father's Day gift, Bo. How about a diehard membership? Go PHNX.com.
Can't beat that. Cannot beat that.
And that lid you're rocking right now.
From of course. You sign up to become a diehard. You get access to the entire site, not just 90% of it. You get the extra 10%. You get access to articles that only diehards can watch. You get, of course, access to our Discord. You can talk Cardinals football, not just on daily shows or to Johnny and us on social media, but, of course, in our Discord channel. Of course, we've got Discord channels for all of our other shows. You got to join up. Become a diehard today and get in on all the action that we have at gophnx.com. Howard Balzer churning out articles a couple times a week. You got to watch, listen, or actually read his latest on DeAndre Hopkins in the Arizona Cardinals. Go to gophnx.com. I believe that is unlocked for your reading pleasure. So check that out. And also, if you sign up, become a diehard, you can get a hat, you can get a shirt. We were discussing over the weekend. I know we're going to put this in motion come next Tuesday. Next Tuesday is going to be the inaugural Tank Tuesday.
Yes.
Where we're going to be wearing tank tops on Tank Tuesday.
Oh, did we decide that we're doing that?
We're gonna because that's the theme. I mean, that's the tank and Tank Tuesday.
I got to get my Manscaped ready to go then, or maybe I won't. Am I right?
There is no way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's Tank Tuesdays. It starts next Tuesday. It's Tank Tuesdays. I'm going to be wearing a tank top. Johnny's going to be wearing a tank top. Emma, you're welcome to wear a tank top to celebrate Tank Tuesdays.
Wow. I have no words.
Well, that's what we were going for.
That's exactly the response that we were looking for. Now we just need a t-shirt, a tank t-shirt at the merchandise locker. We get the powers that be, Eric and company. Get that made up for your boys.
I'll just fashion my own tank top on air next Tuesday. I'll just take one of my favorite, maybe one of my favorite PHNX locker shirts, and I'll just cut the sleeves off. So I'll have my own.
You're gonna just merch our own merch,
but it will be for the better of for Tank Tuesday.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
God, love so much about
because I've kind of outgrown some of my shirts, unfortunately. So
you're a big boy now.
Not in the lab for other reasons.
Oh man, Tank Tuesday. I'll be wearing my tank top for tank. Hey, hell yeah! Everybody, wear your tank tops on Tank Tuesday. Cardinals, are they tanking 2023? We're gonna find out. We're also gonna find out more from our guys. Sam Monson joining us tomorrow from Pro Football Focus.
Sam Monson, PFF.com. He actually just had DeAndre Hopkins ranked, I think, 12th best wide receiver in the NFL. But how come the Cardinals couldn't get anything for him? Sam Monson's going to join us tomorrow and explain why that is. Also give his thoughts on the Cardinals offseason. One of the expert NFL analysts there from Pro Football Focus. Can't wait to talk to him.
Also, ESPN ranked the Cardinals in the top 16 off seasons in 2023. We're going to tell you more about that. But in the meantime, like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. Special thanks to our guy, Kyle Odegard at Compare.bet. We are back mañana. For Bo Brock, I'm Johnny Venerable. Have a good evening.